Hello, I'm a Spinning Grey Cube, and I'd like to talk to you today about capital punishment. This is going to be a bit of a half-assed video. I haven't made a video for a long time, and the last one I made was just a sort of blast of anger, swearing at Boris Johnson, and really that's my only reaction to politics at the moment. Now, one of the videos I haven't made in that time is I haven't made a video about the Conservative leadership election and how it's an embarrassment and an insult to our country that we were having TV debates for an election for the new Prime Minister of our country that almost none of us got to take part in. But that video that I didn't make isn't the video that I didn't make that I'd like to talk about in this video. The video that I didn't make that I'd like to talk about in this video is a video about Sir Kim de Roch, who used to be still actually is, the British ambassador to the US. He's resigned, but so far a replacement hasn't been found, so he still is the ambassador at the moment. And of course the reason why he was forced to resign is that he was simply doing his job and reporting that the Trump administration is a disaster in secret diplomatic documents, which were then leaked to the press. So what I was going to suggest in this video, which I didn't make, is that whoever leaked these documents should maybe get done for treason. And while we still don't know who did actually leak those documents, we do know who the journalist who was responsible was for ferrying those leaked documents from their actual source to a more mainstream journalist. And that journalist was a young man called Stephen Edgington.
My name's Stephen Edgington. I'm young, I'm metropolitan, I'm middle class, and I campaigned for Brexit.
And Stephen Edgington is a 19-year-old pro-Brexit journalist and activist. He actually works for the Brexit Party, but he used to be a YouTuber. And as it happens, the first video I made on this channel, I was looking for more UK politics related stuff on YouTube, and I found a channel called UK Politics, which is run by Mr. Stephen Edgington. It's now been deleted, by the way, the whole channel, but my first video was a reply to one of his videos. He'd made a video about the fact that despite the fact he was a teenager, he was a Brexit supporter, and a video explaining what he thought his reasons were for that. I think we both know the real reason why you supported Brexit though, don't we, Stephen? You were 16, she was the first love of your life, she was the first girl you ever kissed. You knew you were meant to be together, but then she decided to take advantage of her right to live or work anywhere in the EU, with a summer job in the south of France. And that's where she met David. And then every time you called her it was David this and David that. Spent the day with David. We went out for a picnic. I wish you were here. I wish you could meet David. You'd like him so much. You have so much in common. And then one day, you called her and she didn't pick up the phone. And that's when you swore revenge, didn't you, Stephen? You swore revenge on the right to live and work anywhere in the EU. You swore revenge on all the four freedoms of the EU. You swore revenge on the whole institution. But anyway, this story about Stephen Edgington jumped into my newsfeed a few weeks ago. Stephen had acted as a go-between between the leaker and a more mainstream journalist, but he had initially kept his name off the byline. But now he was taking the unusual step of announcing his involvement after he had become paranoid that he was being followed, presumably by agents of the Remainer deep state. I'm guessing working for Peter Mandelson. Peter Mandelson definitely seems like the little finger of the Remainer deep state.
Stephen Edgington
Thought that publicly announcing his name would reduce the possibility of him being bumped off. Of course, it's more likely the people that were following him were MI6 counter-espionage agents, since, he was tied to the leaking of secret documents. And more likely still, he wasn't being followed at all, he was just hanging around in an area of high Pokemon Go activity. Those people who seem to be pretending to just stand around looking at their phones were in fact not following Mr. Edgington with the intention of finding an opportune moment to murder him, but instead just trying to catch a new edition of Pikachu in a limited edition detective hat. But the reality is, even if those people were real MI6 agents, they'd be unlikely to murder you, because the death sentence just isn't a thing in this country, even for treason. After we stopped executing criminals for murder, back in the 60s, there still were a few crimes for which the death penalty was still on the books. Treason was one of them, piracy on the high seas, and non-consensual sex with one of the Queen's corgis, although that last one only applied to other dogs, and Prince Andrew. And even these exceptions were taken off the books. in 1998 when the House of Commons voted to ratify the European Convention on Human Rights. So, Stephen, you're safe. As long as we stay a member of the European Convention on Human Rights... Oh, wait a moment. And as long as we don't have a Home Secretary who supports the death penalty... Oh dear, wait a moment. Priti Patel.
And where we have seen murderers, rapists and people who have committed the most abhorrent crimes in society go into prison and then are released from prison to go out into the community to then re-offend and do the type of crimes that they've committed again and again. I think that's appalling. And actually on that basis alone, I would actually support the reintroduction of capital punishment.
Stephen, I think you better hide or leave the country, mate. So yeah, Priti Patel is the new Home Secretary. She has previously made statements saying that she supports capital punishment. She has more recently made statements saying that she never said the things that she said and she was directly quoted as saying about capital punishment. So clearly you can trust some of the things she says some of the time. She's also made this comment in a recent interview that she wants criminals to literally feel terror at the prospect of committing crimes. Which literally sounds like something a serial killer would say. A serial killer like the Rillington Place Strangler, for example. So there's a video clip that's been floating around Facebook recently. A discussion on Question Time between Priti Patel and Ian Hislop, the latter whom points out that miscarriages of justice do happen all the time, and that capital punishment means that sooner or later you are going to kill an innocent person.
The point is, as I said earlier on, this is about having deterrence. You know, if you have strong deterrence of that nature...
It's not a deterrent,
as well,
killing the wrong people.
Well, no, capital punishment would act as a deterrent.
I was wondering when the last time this had happened was, so I had to look up on Wikipedia. The very last person to be sentenced to death in the UK and Northern Ireland was actually in Northern Ireland. He wasn't actually executed, he was released. His conviction was quashed because it was based on a confession extracted under torture. This isn't really the happy bit of the video, to be honest. There are 3 cases, though, of people who actually were sentenced to death and executed back in the 50s, which caused the death penalty to be phased out and then actually eliminated in the 60s. The most famous of these cases is probably that of Ruth Ellis, who was the last woman to be hanged in Great Britain. She shot her boyfriend dead in the street and was largely unrepentant about it at the trial. However, this was after many years of domestic abuse, and this had culminated in her being punched in the stomach, causing her to miscarry a few months before. Told you this was the miserable bit. I was really hoping that researching murders in the 1950s would be a rich source of dark comedy. But no, it's just grim, mostly. Okay, next one. Derek Bentley was essentially executed on a technicality. An 18-year-old with a learning disability, he broke into a warehouse with an accomplice, armed only with a knuckle duster, which he never used. The police were called and Bentley was caught and taken into custody. After his arrest, however, Bentley's accomplice shot dead a police officer. Because the murder was committed as part of the robbery, the law allowed both of them to be tried for it. However, Bentley's accomplice was under 18, and therefore couldn't be executed. Derek Bentley, on the other hand, could be, and so he was, the age of only 19. No older than Stephen Edgington.
My name's Stephen Edgington.
And finally we come to the serial killer, the Rillington Place Strangler. In 1950, Timothy Evans of 10 Rillington Place was tried, convicted and executed for the death by strangulation of his wife and baby daughter. Unfortunately, he wasn't the Rillington Place Strangler. Particularly if you happen to be one of the next 4 women to be murdered at 10 Rillington Place by Timothy Evans' downstairs neighbour, John Christie, a man who looks like how you imagined that Slender Man would dress in the summer. John Christie wasn't caught until 4 years later, when he moved out of Rillington Place, essentially because he'd run out of places to stash bodies there. So that's the depressing history lesson over. Is it likely that Priti Patel will bring back capital punishment? No. Even if she wanted to, she would still first have to pass a vote in the Commons. That's unlikely to happen, but she said she doesn't want to. All she said she does want to do is introduce terror into the criminal justice system, so I'm not sure what that means. Perhaps she wants to introduce waterboarding into prisons, perhaps she wants to dress prison guards in clown makeup, but apparently she no longer wants to execute people. And if she did want to bring it back, for treason, well, it's worth bearing in mind that previously she was sacked from the government, from her ministerial position at the Foreign Office, for having undeclared meetings with the foreign government and then lying about them. So maybe if she did bring back execution for treason, rather than Stephen Edgington, she would be the first one with her head on the block. Wait, is that an unfortunate phrase? Well, here's a funny thing. If Priti Patel really did want to bring back execution, capital punishment, the chances are she'd want to do it for terrorism and murder, not just for treason and piracy on the high seas. And that would mean rolling back the law all the way to the Murder Act of 1965. And while treason may be one of the last crimes for which we abolished hanging, the punishment for treason before 1973 wasn't hanging. It was beheading. And that's the video. I've run out of things to say now. So I still haven't really decided what the name for this video is going to be, what the title is. And there seems to be a lot of possibilities of great clickbaity things I could put down involving the name Priti Patel and the word beheading. Think I'm probably going to skip that and not get my channel deleted though. I'll be back in 2 to 4 weeks, I imagine, to call Boris Johnson an arse donkey or something, possibly accompanied by music. We'll see. Like, subscribing, whatever. Ring the bell. Ring the bell. Ring the goddamn bell.